Hello, Happy Pacers. It's me, Elaine Sims. Welcome to today's run with Gretchen, Brune, and I, and a special guest. We're joined by Kelly Eldridge, a passionate runner and history buff, who will be taking us on a journey through the history of Forest Park in St. Louis. We'll be posting the route. Take a look if you want to follow along. You too can head over to Forest Park and relive their unique history in real life. Some admin before we start. I'm putting my fate in you, our listeners' hands. If you want to vote on what spring race I do, check out our previous episode and our Instagram page. There are 6 options to vote for, and voting will be open until February 29th, and then I will be booking that trip. The fate is in your hands to choose what spring race I do. Congratulations to our first guest of the podcast, Leah Koch. She was actually the first female overall at the Run for Your Beads Mardi Gras 5K, and she PR'd with a time of 22:12. So congratulations, Leah Koch. We're so proud of you. Woo woo. For those who don't know about Forest Park is a large city park in the western part of St. Louis, Missouri. Think of it as kind of our central park around here. It is currently home to the St. Louis Zoo, the Art Museum, the History Museum, a golf course, an outdoor ice skating rink, and around 1,300 acres of gorgeous land that we personally get to run on and play in. 13 million visitors go there every year, and they just have so many events that they host all the time. I really encourage you to learn about this gem of a city park. We've pulled several resources and references from this episode together, and those are going to be available in the show notes. forestparkforever.org is a very useful website if you're just looking to visit and learn more about the park that we know today. They post all of those events that I was talking about, and we'll give you, parking information and everything like that. Our tour with Kelly primarily focuses on the park from its founding in 1876 and onwards. This is an incredible journey that really helped me personally understand and appreciate the park and overall city of St. Louis and how it has come about today. We would like to take this time to reflect on the original stewards of the land that we are able to benefit from in Forest Park today. Forest Park is located on the indigenous homelands of several tribal nations: the Kickapoo, Peoria, Kaskaskia, Potawatomi, Mia, and Oceti-Sakowin. We acknowledge the European settlers forcibly removed the tribal nations from this land. We acknowledge that we benefit from this land every time we go for a run. If you would like to learn more about our native ancestors that cultivated the land, there's a great presentation by Galen Gritts, the elder of the Cherokee Nation and a speaker that is well established in St. Louis. It's really insightful about the tribal nations of the Mound City that is St. Louis, and I highly recommend it. All right, I've made you wait long enough. Let's get started with this episode of Happy Pace. All right, which way are we going today? That way or that way?
Do you want to start this way?
Sure. You're the leader.
Well, I don't know. We'll just start this way.
You are the leader! I think that was loud enough, Gretchen. So if you're just tuning in to our listeners, we've had some technical difficulties and we've got 2 mics and 3 runners today. Yay! So Gretchen's gonna be screaming.
Hey, I'm pretty used to it.
Yeah.
Because Matt can't hear, so.
Oh yeah.
I've been yelling for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Why can't Matt hear?
So my husband had an ear infection, still kind of has an ear infection, but his ears have been clogged for like 2 weeks straight now.
Oh gosh.
So I literally have been yelling or talking excessively loud for a while. So yeah, I guess we should introduce her runner today.
Yeah. So this is Kelly Eldridge. Hi. Kelly is, she's kind of our friend and our coordinator for Unpaved, and she runs with us for things.
Yep.
Basically, we volunteer with her. She's really smart, and we wanted to bring her on to talk about Forest Park. Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself other than that?
Just a disclaimer that I'm not from St. Louis, but have a serious love for the city and the beauty that surrounds us. And I'm glad we're talking about Forest Park today.
Yay. Kelly, before we begin, what shoes are you wearing?
I'm wearing Hoka's this morning.
Are they the Mach 5 or?
They are.
Nice.
And I'm doing what everyone tells you not to do. I am breaking them in with a 9-mile run this morning.
Classic.
Yep. I know what I'm doing. Okay, so before our little pre-meet, you mentioned some things that you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
With Forest Park. Where do you want to dig in as we head towards Art Hill?
Yeah, pretty much my timeline of Forest Park mostly starts with the World's Fair. But
Okay.
I know Forest Park kind of existed before then.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure a lot of St. Louisans, and I'm not also from St. Louis. Gretchen is the only St. Louisan
In this conversation.
in this conversation.
But she was not here when Forest Park
I was not.
was established.
No. Old, they're not that old.
So I think first, chronologically, what do you know about Forest Park like before predating?
World's Fair?
Yeah.
So by the 1850s, 1860s, St. Louis was really growing. And this will come into play later if we go over near the jewel box. But the St. Louisans were using this really soft coal to heat their homes. So it was really polluted and really smoggy, hard to breathe. So other cities, like New York, had established Central Park. And that was sort of like the popular thing to do. We're gonna cut left here because I'm taking you
Yay!
on a route.
Good job.
Which is why I have my light. Because we have to look at Art Hill.
I have to yell everything.
So anyway, so there was success with Central Park and St. Louis wanted one too. So for years, they had been talking about where they were gonna put the park, and ultimately, the first guy who came up with the idea, they were like, oh, that's ridiculous. It's too far away. And then they ended up landing on this location that was about equally as far away. At the time, in 1876, when Forest Park opened, or was established, it was a 40-minute carriage ride from downtown.
Dang.
So it was open for all people, open for everyone to be able to use, but really only the people who had their own transportation could get here, because until the late 1890s, well, right turn, 1890s, they didn't have a streetcar that would bring people here.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, all right, I'm gonna shine my light. We're gonna go really slow.
Okay.
I'm gonna shine my light onto all this water, and you know, the Grand Basin and
Yes.
what that looks like. All right, I'll keep running. We're gonna take a left. Actually, let's go around and then we'll turn around, because I want, even though it's dark, for you to sort of get this feeling. So I'm skipping way ahead. We're way past the World's Fair. Now it's 1911. It's the 150th anniversary of the city. They're trying to figure out what to do. So on this water that you see right here, they built a stage. And the stage was 100 feet long. I can't remember how deep it was. It was pretty deep. And then they had a 40-foot high wall that went, all right, we can flip, that went up on the backside. They had to take a boat to get to the stage.
Holy cow.
It had 7,000 actors in this play.
What?
Yes,
7,000?
7,000 actors. And the play was 5 hours long. And it ran for 4 days. This is a really cool story.
Yeah.
So it ran for 4 days, the end of May. One day, they had rain, so they added an additional day. And they were hoping that they would get, I don't know, maybe 100,000 people to come see this play. Well, they had about 100,000 every night.
Oh my God.
They sat on this hill behind us. They lined up. So after the first night, the second day, people arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning with their little lunch baskets. The play started, I think, at 6 p.m. And this was in May, end of May, like May 28th. So we know how cool and crisp those days are in St. Louis. But it was a huge success. But because of that huge outdoor theater success, the Muni
That's what I was
established.
Okay.
Because they knew there was definitely an interest and they wanted it to be in the park. And so that's when they looked around and got the area where the Muni is now.
Oh my God.
Isn't that cool?
It feels so
And
logical too.
Let me just tell you that a woman came up, her name was Charlotte Rumbold. She put together, she didn't write the play. The play was called The Pageant and the Mask. And it was basically about the birth of King Louis, who became St. Louis, and like him growing up, and then the establishment of St. Louis, all that stuff. It was wild. So it's called The Pageant and the Mask.
I wonder if there's still like, well, there's still got to be copies around.
Yes, you can read it. I think it's probably crazy.
Yeah, little early 1911 floating stage performance.
Right. So while we're here, directly to our right, we're coming on the path, we're heading towards the zoo, but to our right is Shakespeare Glen. So since we're talking about art, Shakespeare Glen is where the Shakespeare in the Park takes place, which is another free, you can pay to get good seats,
Yeah.
or you can go sit in some lawn seats. Let's take a left. The park is still living up to its, we want to have, things that are accessible for everyone. The
Yes.
zoo is free, art museum is free. But anyway, also it was dark so you couldn't see it, but there was a big monument back there with a guy. He was basically the father of gymnastics. I'm not going to get into him right now, but that's where the German pavilion was in the World's Fair.
Oh, okay.
So now here on our right is the World's Fair Pavilion, which was not here during the World's Fair. That was a gift to the city for hosting the World's Fair, but that's where the Missouri Pavilion was during the World's Fair.
Oh.
So that's why they put it there. But in front, this right now is called Government Hill.
Yeah.
And that's where the US government had their pavilion.
Oh.
But another thing that's important, in the 1920s, there was the WPA. And are you familiar with what that is? It was the Works Progress Administration.
Oh, yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were trying to employ men who were unemployed.
Yeah.
So the WPA came and they terraced Government Hill and added the steps.
Oh.
And I really wish the next time you run through here in the daylight,
Yeah.
please stop in the middle and look up. So the way that the landscapers have it now, there are zigzag sidewalks that you cannot see from down here. So when they did the plan, they didn't want you to be able to see the sidewalks. And so the landscaping is also different if you stand at the bottom and look up versus at the top and look down. So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the WPA also built these little, they're called comfort stations. And I'm pointing at the bathroom in front of the boathouse. So they are called comfort stations. And it was part of the effort to make Forest Park accessible and like have a place for people to excuse themselves if they needed to. So they built a lot of these buildings too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, WPA.
Yes. And
I'm curious what those were, because they were all like, they're super nicely built.
yes. Yes.
I was always curious if they were as old as they looked.
They are. Well, a lot of them were put in the 20s.
Yeah.
And so this is also when they buried the River de Pere, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But okay, from here we can go up to the jewel box right now and around, or we can stay down and go around. Either way, we're ending up at the jewel box.
Ooh.
So do you want to go right, or do you want to do everything else first? Well, either way, we're going to have a hill at some point.
I kind of like starting with the jewel box.
Okay, first we're going to talk about that though.
Okay, perfect.
So we're looking straight at, we're looking at the Muni, and this is Pagoda Circle.
Yeah.
And in the middle, it's not really a pagoda, it's technically a bandstand. And that is the second one, because the first one burned in 1896, and it was gorgeous. Oh my gosh, but it was made of wood and it did not survive. So here's the Muni on our left. Anyway, back to the bandstand. The guy who donated the money, his name was Nathan Frank, and it was 1925 when he donated the money to have that built, and he donated, I think, $25,000 or something. And at the time, that was the largest donation from an individual contributor. And so that is the Nathan Frank Bandstand. He also served in either the House or the Senate in Missouri. I can't remember, I'm sorry. But
he was a politician.
40 years after he died, roughly, the Jewish Literary Magazine was writing an article about all of his accomplishments. And in that lengthy list of accomplishments, they included that he was an amazing salad dressing maker. So can you imagine being dead for 40 years and someone still praising your salad dressing?
Hey, I want that to be my legacy.
Right?
But although I don't like salad, so.
But you can only get to the bandstand on a boat.
Okay.
Yes. And they do have like quartet performances there. Okay, we're gonna go past the jewel box for a second, and then maybe come, well, that doesn't make sense. All right, I'm gonna talk about the jewel box. So the jewel box was constructed in like 1936, and I'll let Elaine take a guess at what the jewel box truly is. Any ideas?
Well, I've been inside for a wedding.
Yep.
Looks like a botanical greenhouse or something.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. But the purpose was such. So earlier I talked about the soft coal and the pollution. So by now, in the 1920s, it is so polluted downtown. Here, let's go this way so we can like run by it. It is so polluted downtown that there is a day in November that they called the day that it was night. You could not see the sun that day.
I've never heard of this. That's wild.
So look, November, I think it was 1929.
A lot of things happened in that year.
Yes. So it was so dark and so dirty, they canceled school because they were worried kids were going to get hit by vehicles because no one could see. So anyway, what they had in Forest Park and where we're headed is they had greenhouses. And those greenhouses are important. Actually, can we just pause for 1 second? Okay, so this is great because you can see, we'll talk about the structure of this. There are 6 or 8 arches on the inside that hold up the building.
Yeah.
This building, the way that it is like terraced sort of, it has steel on the roof of each little part and then the glass on the side. It has never been destroyed by all of the hailstorms that we have. Nothing. Like, it has survived all of it. They didn't think that it would. They were like, oh, but what helps are these supporting arches that are on the inside. And then of course, there are huge like tarp curtain type things that they can lift and lower because it is essentially a greenhouse. But they built this because in these greenhouses over here that we're going to go see, they would plant and grow things that the environment wouldn't kill. So what can survive in St. Louis? Can this plant, if I grow it, survive in the dirty St. Louis? So they would come up with things that would survive, and then everyone would want to come see them. So then they would traipse through, hundreds of people would traipse through these greenhouses and destroy everything. So they're like, we have to have a display.
Yeah.
So this is the display for what people could grow in St. Louis. But around the same time, we can go, people were like, okay, this is crazy that it is so dark and polluted. Maybe we should fix this first. So they passed a law that you had to burn Arkansas coal, which is harder and cleaner. And we'll go left here. So that made like a huge difference pollution-wise. But when this debuted, people either loved it or hated it. You were like in camp, I love the jewel box, or I hate it.
I don't see anything to hate about it.
Well, they said it looked like an ice cube. We'll go this way.
Really cool looking ice cube.
So they're getting ready because we're coming into spring. This is where all the tulips are.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're preparing these beds for that.
Do they like replant them? I don't see like the bulbs.
Well, they should be underneath.
Yeah.
But you have to divide the bulbs every couple years.
Oh.
All right, we're gonna end up coming back this way, but I wanna take you
I kind of want to appreciate for a second that, just about 100 years ago, we definitely couldn't have done this run because of the pollution.
Right. Well, we couldn't have done this run because our uteruses would have fallen out.
Oh yeah, that too. Because
women can't run. So over here is like the Parks Department, but there are still greenhouses on this other side. And so here, we'll have a little peeky peek. Also, since we're coming up on it, when they built, as the St. Louisans call it, 40, it came onto Forest Park property.
Yeah.
So Forest Park lost, I think, over 300 acres.
What?
To the highway. So here you can start to see some of the greenhouses, but what was lost is all of this area was all where the greenhouses were.
Okay.
So
300 acres?
Oh yeah. Well, all the way from Kings Highway to Skinker.
Oh my goodness.
Pretty much. So see these greenhouses?
Yeah.
So they went across the highway. We'll stop so that you can not have traffic noise.
Yeah.
But they went across the highway and they were all over there. And all of the plants in all of the city parks are cultivated in these greenhouses. So that's kind of cool.
That's
So
cool.
So Tower Grove Park is not a city park. Tower Grove Park is a private park.
What?
Yes, that's your NIMBY. I'll talk about that if you want to. But while we're standing here, so right here straight in front, for location purposes, we have just come up the little roundabout. We're standing just to the west of Central Fields, and we're looking onto I-40, and just to our east slightly on our left-hand side is the community college, but straight ahead is where in the 1920s they built what later, I think in the 1960s, became known as the Checker Dome. But before that, it was, oh my gosh, what was it called? Anyway, they built it for the Dairy Association that came. So it was a huge, huge venue that later became where the Blues played. And it became the Checker Dome. And it was torn down in the 90s.
Okay.
But it was right here. But it was built for the dairy convention. So it was this huge, huge, huge building, but it had all these stalls like on the outside. So they took the stalls out later, but then it became a venue, and like basketball played there, the Harlem Globetrotters were there, and it became the Checker Dome when Purina took it over, which is why it's Checker Dome.
Okay.
But they tore it down. And then to the east of that, so between here and where SLU High School is, was a place called the Highlands of Forest Park. And that was an amusement park that opened in 1896. And every summer before they would reopen, they would add like something crazy. And it was insane. They had these like roller coasters, and they were definitely thrill seekers, but it burned in 1963. There was a fire and it burned, and they just didn't replace
Okay,
it.
so totally like side note, I feel like there were so many fires that happened like back in the day.
Oh yeah, we have fires all the time.
Why?
So many
Why was
fires.
that?
So many fires. I think, well, after the fire downtown, everything had to be built of brick or like fireproof stuff. Okay. So if you look here, we'll go this way. So like in Tower Grove, west of Grand, there are some houses that are wood, and those predated the fire line.
Okay.
So there was, the city initiated a fire line, and if you build like within this area, it has to be brick or stone, fireproof type situation. But you'll find they're on Juniata, some of them. There's little wooden houses, and you can tell that they're super old because the fire line ultimately like went out to Kings Highway, and then it went further. But well, why did so many things burn? I don't know. I mean, it was July, so it was hot.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was a cigarette.
Yeah.
We have wind,
Yep.
so it spreads.
We have wind.
I'm glad you had to shout that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm taking you back. We're looking at the beautiful jewel box, but to the right of the jewel box, there are some random gates that people are like, what is this? So we'll cross and get closer.
So Kelly, side
Yeah.
note, when did you move to St. Louis?
I've lived here twice. So the first time I lived here from 2008 to 2012.
Okay.
And then my husband came back in 2018, but I stayed in Knoxville, Tennessee with the kids till 2020.
Oh, whoa.
We were hoping for our oldest to graduate from high school, and they did, but
During
COVID,
yeah.
COVID sort of took away the actual graduating with your classes part.
Yeah. Irony.
Yeah. Okay, so to our left, you can sort of see these pillars and this like gate situation. Here, we'll run up this path. So St. Louis has always had
I've never seen that in my life.
like the fancy neighborhoods, okay?
Yes.
Where the wealthy live. So there was a neighborhood of, it was 86 houses. It was called Vandeventer Place. and the houses were enormous. And this was the gate at the street to get you in.
Whoa.
And
so they moved it?
Well, here, I guess we'll just go. This is World War II Memorial.
Okay.
As the pollution spread and people kept moving further and further west, so Van Deventer Place was, here, we'll go left again and back out into the street. Oh. They would move out of those houses, and sometimes they weren't reoccupied. So, let's see, can I go?
Because people couldn't afford it?
Well, they couldn't, or they were like, ooh, it's, you know, it's polluted here or whatever. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll go right. So those houses started to fall into disrepair. And then ultimately the VA hospital came and, we'll go left, tore the rest down. So where the VA hospital is now, on Grand, just north of basically Washington.
Okay.
So if you pass the Fox Theater and go like a couple of blocks, that's where Van Deventer Place was. But those gates, now I'm having a senior moment, but I'm pretty sure Theodore Link designed those gates. And he is the architect.
Fact check that, by the way.
Well, I know that he did the gates in Westmoreland Place.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that in a second, but I'm pretty sure he did those gates too.
Okay.
But he is the architect who did Union Station.
Oh.
So Theodore Link, he was a prominent architect in St. Louis. They saved the gates and moved them here, but everything else is gone. And so that's kind of, no, this is a Forest Park tour, but I have to get on my horse for a second and talk about destruction of buildings, because once that building is gone and that neighborhood is gone, like, you don't know that it's there, because there's nothing to see of that time anymore. And so, like, if you go up near Powell Hall and you're on Delmar was full of houses, big Victorian or Second Empire houses, and they're all gone. They've torn them all down. And so I feel like when there's nothing left to ask about, it doesn't trigger questions of what used to be here.
Yeah, the curiosity.
Yeah.
Because, like, just thinking about it, even like growing up in Cleveland and all of the big mansions, basically BP oil money built in Cleveland, and driving past those all the time, like, that sparked so much interest out of me as a child.
Yes. Like, what do they do to afford this big house? Or,
exactly.
Or stuff like that. And I mean, it was also proof St. Louis in the 1800s was the 5th largest city in the US and bigger than Chicago for a long time. But Chicago really invested in rail, and I think that helped them. We were a little slow on the rail.
Clang, clang, clang goes the trolley.
But there was so much money in St. Louis, which is why we have the cathedral. I mean, that cathedral was, I mean, phenomenally expensive to build.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't put that cathedral in a second-rate city. It would go in a first-class city, because we already had a cathedral downtown on the riverfront.
Right.
So if you want to talk about, like, wealth, we had it. But we're back to Forest Park. So we're heading towards Steinberg, and we'll get into Steinberg, and I'll talk about the River de Pere, and I'll talk about how we got Steinberg and race relations, and then we'll bring up World's Fair and the Olympics.
Perfect.
But we're on the total opposite side of World's Fair. So we are running towards Steinberg. Let's see, we'll enter here and then we'll go to the right. So Mrs. Steinberg was married to a doctor, and as we can see as we approach, that is Hospital Row, and she would look down into Forest Park, and they were from New York, so she knew Central Park and knew that it had an ice skating rink, and so she wanted Forest Park to have an ice skating rink.
Yes.
And so she then became the largest individual donor because she donated a phenomenal amount of money to establish Steinberg skating rink. But her caveat was it had to be open to everyone. So Steinberg was actually the first place in Forest Park that opened as a desegregated place.
Wait, really?
Yes. And that was in the 50s. 1950s.
That's insane.
Yes. So that was her rule. She said you can have the money, but it has to be open to everyone.
I knew I liked this little ice rink.
Yep.
So, like in New York, were things already starting to be desegregated?
I think so. Plus it was a northern city.
Yeah.
So, okay, this, that's the joie de vivre.
Yeah.
But anyway, so.
Well, so do you consider, and here's, I guess, a question for us all, do we consider St. Louis part of the South? I don't know if we want to answer that question, but just a question.
Geographically, no. Behaviorally, the city of St. Louis at the time, not necessarily, but there were a lot of slaveholders. But out in the rural parts of the state, there were a lot of slaveholders. So, I don't know.
Question for another podcast, I guess.
Probably.
Not for this episode.
I think we can all do better.
Yeah.
In our behavior.
100%.
So this water that you see, this will take us to the River de Pere conversation. Good morning.
Morning.
So when they opened up Forest Park in 1876, there were farms out here. This land was taken by eminent domain of part of the original wealthy families of St. Louis. They had, it's like the Cabinets, they had farmland here. So this was taken, which is why that's called the Cabinet House that we'll pass in a little bit. But
Morning.
Anyway, so as time went on and okay, I'm sorry, I have to tell you about this. This is the Victorian Bridge. This used to be the original entrance into Forest Park when they finally brought the streetcar in. The streetcar dropped them at the corner of Kings Highway and Lindell. There's that triangle spot. That was where the streetcar station was. And it was called the Laclede Station. And the Laclede Station was torn down. It left the towers, but by the 1940s, the towers came down. But this was the main entrance into the park that brought, because this was built in 1890, like in the early 1890s. By 1896, they brought the streetcar in. So this is the Victorian Bridge. I love this bridge so much. Okay, so by the time 1904 rolls around, many people have now moved west. And the River de Pere ran from U City through, and it went through the center and wiggled all the way through Forest Park. Well, the River de Pere then and now is mostly empty until it rains and then it floods. So most people, we'll turn right, used the River de Pere as more of a sewage line.
Oh,
so
fun.
It was stinky, like it smelled awful. And so when the planners for the World's Fair, they were like, what are we gonna do about this stinky river that goes right through the park? We can't have this smell for all these people. So they covered it up with wood and then built the World's Fair on top of it. And everyone was like, this is amazing. Like, it's not stinky anymore. And so when the World's Fair was over, the deal always is you have to put everything back the way that it was before the fair. So they took away the wooden encasement around the river, and people were like, oh, it's bad. So in 1911, there was a really bad flood, and now the wealthy have moved west, kind of towards, U City, and they were like, no, and we've got to fix this. So that's when the WPA came in and they buried 18 miles of the River de Pere. So it's underneath, they rerouted it. It now is in 30-foot tube that runs down Lindell. And then at that little area where I told you the Loughlin station,
Yeah.
it makes a right turn. It goes right underneath the big Jefferson Lake that's there near Steinberg. And it stays underground, underneath Slough High, all the way. It comes out at 44 and Macklin. So,
What?
Yep. So all of this water is city-fed water because they cut off the access to the River de Pere. So all the water that is in the park is like man-made now and kind of forced in.
That's
but
insane.
I have something we're gonna have to kind of off-road right here, Elaine. All right, you hear that?
Yep. It rained last night.
Yep. And you can smell it.
Oop.
This is the River de Pere. This is the only access. Oh, they've moved it. Here, let me shine my light. Oh, they have a fan down there now. Fan's not on, that's the water.
Oh, wow.
And see the steps down? So it goes down to where you can access the tunnel.
That's insane.
Isn't it? And this is the only access point to the tunnel now, unless you walk down the tunnel in U City or walk through the tunnel at 44 in Macklin. This is the access point.
So I'm wondering, like, when the River de Pere floods, does it come up through here?
It can. That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
But that's why it floods at the metro station.
Okay.
And I mean, it would flood here. This is like, there's a lot of water here.
Yeah.
Which was naturally occurring.
There's like giant puddles.
Yes.
On this path.
Yes.
So basically, the river de Pere, they took all the water and put put it in a tube. And now
I'll show you.
Oh my God.
I'll show you next. Here, we'll go this way. Okay. So the terminus, we ran over, but I didn't want to get us sidetracked a fifth time. So the bridge right before we got to Steinberg, where they looks like they've just cut a bunch of stuff, that used to be the end of the, here, we're gonna go this way. Left turn.
I do want to point out this is iconically where I made Mara, my old roommate, pick me up one time because I got tired.
Right in front of Franz Siegel.
Yep.
So it starts at the Cascade by the Art Museum, and it flows through all of the wetlands that we have, and then at the terminus near Steinberg, you can hear it rushing down. There's a grate, and it pumps the water back up to the Art Museum, and it just circles through. So what they're doing now is they are going to connect this river that like ends abruptly.
Yeah.
They're connecting it to Jefferson Lake.
Okay.
And they're actively doing that now, or?
Yes, that's what they're doing now.
There's construction over there.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
There's a whole plan at Jefferson Lake. They're gonna do an overlook. But anyway, St. Louis won a civil engineering award for what they did with the River de Pere. See the water?
Yeah.
Elaine, that's city water. And we have city water in this park because of the World's Fair. They were like, we're gonna need water for all these people coming. So that's how the park got access.
It got plumbed
to the city water in the first place. So that's a little tidbit for you.
I mean, so I'm picturing 1904. It smells and I can't see.
Well, yeah, but out here you could see.
Okay.
Downtown, you couldn't really see. All right, we're gonna turn right because I want to take you to the cannon. Okay, so we'll go to the cannon and then we'll go and I'll talk about where the World's Fair started. Okay, you see that cannon?
Yep.
Elaine?
Yes. Nice and copper.
Yep. Beautifully patinaed. There's a funny story about this cannon. Do you want to off-road through the grass or go around?
I mean, I like trails.
Okay.
I'm like looking at my notes and I'm like, I don't even think I need them.
I feel like Kelly's got us.
Sorry. I did not mean to take over.
No, I'm glad you did.
Okay. So this cannon has a funny story. Because of the traffic, I didn't take us over there. But right where the planetarium is now, that was built in the 60s.
Yes.
That used to be the mounted police station.
Okay.
And they had, we'll just take a little brief break. They had stables. So have you looked at this, Elaine?
No.
So this is for Spanish King Charles III. It was forged. This was the number 1197 in Seville, whatever.
Yes.
On the 21st of March, almost as old as St. Louis.
Holy crap.
So old. And so here's the date, 1789, is that what that says?
1783.
83. So we're 1764, the city. By the way,
Okay.
yesterday was its birthday, officially. So Spanish-American War in the late 1800s, then the Spanish admiral was doing his like victory tour all around the US, and he was gonna come to St. Louis. And so the American government is like, we're gonna give you this cannon that we stole from the Spanish.
Yeah.
As you come and like, we brag about all the terrible things that we do during war. So the city's like, great, that's amazing. And they said, we want it to go to Forest Park. No one consulted Forest Park. So anyway, the cannon comes, it's a big deal. Everybody goes downtown, they're like, oh my God, the cannon, here, we can run. And so, oh my God, it's so beautiful. That house was not here when they put it up. Just so you know, those were built in like the 1920s. This was placed here in 1901.
That would be
Not aimed at the
It was not aimed at those houses. Okay, so then the city, they don't call, but anyway, they call up the guy at Forest Park and they're like, yo, you're getting a cannon. This is amazing. And the Forest Park guy is like, no one asked me. I don't have the budget. We are not getting a cannon. All right, so let's make a hard right and go on that little path down there. So, whoops.
We are not getting a cannon.
And so they're like, haha, joke's on you, yes you are. So he's like, cool, that's fine. So they take receipt of the cannon, and the Forest Park guy is like, haha. And he sticks it, all right, left here. He sticks it in the stables for the horses. And so like a year goes by and the cannon is there. And this is my favorite part of the story. Somebody writes an anonymous letter to the Post-Dispatch from the perspective of the cannon, who is a war hero who is stuck in the stables guarding the hay and the chickens. And so then everyone's like, oh yeah, where is that cannon? And so very unceremoniously, the cannon gets placed there. And so, anyway, years and years go by, everyone from that time period dies. Now we're in the early 2000s, and people are like, what is this cannon? And the Confederate memorial used to be right behind it.
Oh, whoa.
And so I think a lot of people just assumed it's a Confederate cannon. Like it's package deal, whatever. So
all war is the same.
Anyway, they take away, anyway, somebody's like, what is this cannon? And it took the historian of Forest Park like a long time to research what that cannon actually was, which is now why we have a plaque. But that cannon is from the Spanish-American War, and I cannot believe that we still have it, to be honest. It's made of Mexican copper. Like on the side, it says, forged from Mexican copper. Anyway, and it's beautifully inscribed.
I'm shocked that it took them that long to, only because of the inscription.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm assuming it just wasn't like as visible. There's tarnish on it or something.
All right, how are you guys doing on time and mileage?
6:47.
I'm good at any time before 7:15.
Okay. How are you doing, Gretchen?
I'm good.
Okay, so this is now, we're crossing the Bolivar. This is World's Fair territory.
Okay.
The rest of Forest Park from here east is Forest Park. It is not World's Fair.
Oh.
World's Fair starts here and goes west, all the way to what is now Big Bend. Okay?
That's far.
That's far. But most, I mean, that's included because, well, the campus wasn't there, but it's included because Francis Field, which is WashU's football field, that is where the Olympics were held. And the
iconic 1904 Olympics.
Yes. But they also had track and field events that, as far as I can tell, went over fine.
Okay, they didn't go over like the marathon?
They did not go over like the marathon. The 1904 Olympics were supposed to be in Chicago.
Yes.
And then everyone was like, oh, well, we're having this big party in St. Louis. We feel like if the Olympics is in Chicago, we're gonna be siphoning off people from each.
Yeah. Cannibalizing each other.
They agreed to move it here, but it was very difficult to get to. Anyway, it was part of it. The only events that happened in Forest Park were some 3 swimming events. Like, oops, you done, Gretchen? They had like swimming, water polo, and diving. And they took place in the little pond that they made at Skinker and Wydown that was supposed to be the like rescue pond to teach people how to do life-saving techniques and stuff. Otherwise, all the track and field events were at Francis Field. So in the deal with having Forest Park here, and it's actually, you know, the official title is the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Expedition.
Yes.
Because it was the 100-year anniversary of the Louisiana Purchase.
Wasn't it held a year late though?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that was technically 1803.
Yeah.
So it was a year late. I don't think any World's Fair ever started on time. But anyway, I would have pointed it out, but it's under construction. It was originally called the Jefferson Memorial.
Yeah.
And now it's the History Museum, but in front they have a huge depiction of the Louisiana Purchase in the concrete. But they're redoing their front entry right now. And that building was not here for the World's Fair either. That was built in like 1911, 1913, and oh, we're too far away. Only the front part. They put the expansion on the back in the 70s.
Okay.
But part of the deal was we were going to use a lot of this property. And so the Brookings Hall, which we'll see in a second, and the Art Museum, the Palace of Fine Arts, were the only 2 buildings that would remain. The Brookings Hall, after the World's Fair, would turn over entirely to Wash U, but it was for the administration of the World's Fair to use it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they had a nice temporary office space.
Yes. Yes. Well, the other thing we ended up keeping is the bird cage, or the flight cage. That was done by the Smithsonian, and it was supposed to go back to DC
Yeah.
after the World's Fair. And there was some negotiating, and we purchased it for a song. Like, whew, I think they hardly paid anything for it, but I think it was probably better for the Smithsonian to write it off as a loss
Yeah.
than ship it back.
Gotcha. Something that I think is interesting that is just random, but related to the World's Fair, the Ferris wheel, the world's first frickin' Ferris wheel.
Well, it was from Chicago.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they moved it down here.
Yep.
And then it was here for a few years, and then they blew it up.
Yep.
I think they moved it to the next World's Fair.
Nope.
No. Did they blow it up here?
It burned.
It burned?
Yes.
I think it burned.
And the official position of the History Museum is that the axle left the city. Okay, we can turn back so Gretchen can get back. But that is Brookings Hall with the two
spires? Okay.
That is what they got in the History Museum, and then we have the, So, but this Skinker was a dirt road for the World's Fair. I mean, this was not what it is today at all. No, not like this at all. You know, that wasn't there.
Right.
So, Skinker was really, and I don't think it was called Skinker at that time. I think it was called, I'm not sure. And I think Big Bend was called Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But this was a tiny little dirt road. And so somewhere near Skinker and Forsyth / Wydown is where the Ferris wheel was.
Okay.
Okay.
And there are some pictures. A lot of people say it's buried underneath Skinker. I don't think so. But the official position of the History Museum is that it is not underneath Skinker. So
That's like, so in high school, there was this whole, this, just unrelated to any of this, there's this old banker who was really corrupt, who had this mansion and summer home, and eventually he got put into jail, and his wife had to sell the land to someone, so she sold it to to the nuns who had our school, and they built our school on this land. When this, but before obviously it became our school, like this guy, his daughter had like wandered into the dirt street by the giant mansion and got hit by a horse and buggy and died. And then he erected these giant stone walls. So at the end of your, cause like, you know, he didn't want any of his other children going into the street.
yeah.
So two things on that. There's the myth that the horse that struck his daughter is buried in the island in like the pond on the property. And then two, at the end of your time and your tenure at school, on the last day of classes, you jump over the stone walls, and so much fun. So
Yeah, I would like that.
yeah, you would love that property.
It's in Cleveland.
Yeah. So I feel like I would go for a run with you anywhere, find a fun city.
That's my favorite thing to do. And then I go and look up all the buildings.
Yeah. Do you just like go online, or?
Sometimes it's a good start, but like here, if I see a building I like, I go into like the tax records, and you can find a lot of information there. Usually like who owns it, or when it was built, what modifications they've done to it.
Is that that's not at the like assessor's office, is it?
Let's see, I have it bookmarked.
Oh, so it's online?
Yeah, that part's online.
Okay, good.
And then you can go into City Hall.
Yeah.
But the library downtown at the Cabinet Library, Central Library, down on like near Soldiers Memorial, upstairs they have a St. Louis room.
Ooh.
And they have tons and tons of information.
So I'm gonna link these in our show notes.
Okay.
So
My other favorite document is the street name document.
Ooh.
So as a project several years ago, some people went through and wrote down all the street names and why they're named that way. Like, if it's Plum, it's probably because downtown originally all the streets were tree names. But
hence Maple.
Yeah.
Oh, not Maple.
but like Morgan Ford.
Yes.
That was named after Morgan's ford, who was the little ferry that took you across the river to Pear.
Oh.
And like Hall's Ferry, that's location for the ferry that took you across the Missouri River. Like the road that took you to that ferry.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is streets in St. Louis that are named after women are first name only. So Anne is Anne Russell.
Yeah.
And
Oh, wait, but there's Russell Ave.
that's her father or her husband. I think it was her father, William Russell.
That sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
So Julia is Julia Soulard. Julia Street
Oh,
runs
my goodness.
on the other side of 55,
Yeah.
straight to the market, because it was Julia left the land for Soulard Market.
Yeah, I run there all the time. I know
Yeah.
exactly where.
And so street names, like in Tower Grove South, there's a street Lucy.
Morning.
That was Lucy Bent. And there's also a Bent. But there is a Blow Street. So Susan Blow started the first kindergarten and was really instrumental. But the street is not named after her. It's named after her father. But she has an elementary school, Blow Elementary, which is kind of in the Carondelet area, but it's now condos. But like, that document is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because like, why is that street off of Arsenal and Tower Grove called Oak Hill? Well, that was the plantation that William Russell lived in when they found the coal in Tower Grove. That's why Tower Grove Park is there, because Henry Shaw was already living in what's called Shaw's Garden.
Yeah.
And he was like, ugh, coal, nope. Don't want it any closer to my house.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he put the park in
Kind of a barricade.
as a buffer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wait, did they move his house or
Yes.
something in the botanical gardens?
So he had a country house, which is there, and he had a city house, which they moved. And the
Gotcha.
city house is that huge brick one
Yeah.
that you see when you run down Tower Grove Ave into Tower Grove Park. Oh,
It's
we didn't
all
get to,
connected.
yeah.
It is.
I know you talked about Forest Park for, all inclusive or just all accessible.
Yeah.
What confuses me, and we did run past this sign, is the fields by permit use only.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't 100% know this answer.
Yes.
But in working with Forest Park in the capacity that I have, I can tell you that there is more demand than there is space and time. So if my group wants to come play a pickup soccer game and your group wants to come play a pickup game, and we show up at the same time, like, who gets it?
Yeah.
So I think, plus this park is expensive to maintain. And so because it's free for us to come run around it, use its beauty,
Yes.
there needs to be something in place to cover the cost. So I would imagine that's it. And
Gotcha.
yeah,
They need to generate some revenue, some level
Yes.
of revenue.
yes, because I think the taxes that we all pay hardly cover it.
Yeah. So if you would like to donate to Forest Park,
Forest Park forever.
Forest Park Forever,
Yep.
they have They have links online.
Yep.
We'll put it in our show notes. We know that they annually have an I Love Forest Park 5K.
Yep.
So,
but also, if you become a member, here, there are locker rooms downstairs. So it's not even that expensive. So if you come and run here every day, it's, what is it, $150 a year or something?
Like that, pretty
It's
cheap.
not very expensive. And there are locker rooms in the basement of this, which used to be a streetcar station.
the visitor center used to be a streetcar station.
It was,
Yeah, it makes
yeah. So when they added Loughlin station, this was Lindell Pavilion. It burned. This poor building has been through, and then it blew up. So they built this in like 1896, roughly, and it had a little hat on the top. It had a roof, a triangular roof on top of that. What? So they built it. It was all open, but it was a shelter so the streetcar could come in, and you had a place to get out of the rain or whatever elements. So anyway. Then in, I think 1925, it burned. But before that, they started using this as the clubhouse for the golf course. So this was really the clubhouse for the golf course when it was no longer the streetcar station. So then it burned down, they rebuilt it, and then in the 1940s, there was a gas explosion and it blew up the building. But they did determine that it was the fault of the gas company, so they gave them the money. And so then at that point, I think the golf course got its own clubhouse, and so this became the visitor center.
Okay.
This poor building.
Yeah.
But you can still take a shower in it if you would like to. And like that's the trolley room, and you can rent that out. There are a lot of weddings and stuff here.
Yeah.
So a lot of weddings in there, a lot of weddings at World's Fair Pavilion, a lot of weddings in the Jewel Box. You can also rent out the History Museum and the Art Museum.
Well, thank you so I will. Don't worry, I'm good at it. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us.
I don't know if it was helpful or
Oh my
not.
gosh.
Now it's finally light and you can see stuff.
I've learned so
but
much.
There's so much more. But the basketball courts are going back there.
They are?
They never had basketball courts here in Forest Park. They were in Tower Grove in the 1990s. They took them out
And then
for racial reasons.
Yes.
And they're being put back in. And every time I go by there, people are like playing basketball.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought?
Right.
But the golf course was segregated. The Muni was segregated. And the Highlands amusement park, I believe that was segregated as well. But after World War II, the Americans from World War II came back and they were like, we were fighting with our black brothers. Why are they not allowed to sit anywhere? Like they fought for this country. And so the men coming back from World War II were really helpful in helping to desegregate the Muni. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Hope you guys have a great day.
You too. Yeah, we'll
Back to you.
de-mic you.
Hopefully it was on.
Oh yeah, I was checking periodically to make sure. A quick note from Elaine, the editor here, with a few things from the episode I wanted to clarify. Kelly was really spot on with about 98% of the facts that she shared, but I did find a couple of things that needed to be corrected. Please be gentle, as we were literally running while talking, so this was incredibly impressive. 1914 was when the pageant in the Mask of St. Louis happened. She accidentally misstated it as 1911. The guy who designed the Van Deventer Gate was actually Louis Mulgrat, but the Nathan Frank bandstand donation was $50K. Kelly originally thought it was $25K, so just another little thing. The day that was night was Black Tuesday in 1939. Again, just a little misstatement from 1929 to 1939. So huge shout out, special thanks to Kelly Eldridge for taking us on this journey today. You're fantastic, incredible. Just so jazzed that we were able to get this opportunity and that you were willing to share all of your wealth of information with us. So that's it for this episode of Happy Pace. Subscribe to our channel wherever you can find our podcast and like this episode if you found your happy pace while listening. This is a House of Machka production. Our music maestro is Grant Underhill. Our social media guru is Gretchen Brune. And this episode was recorded and edited by Elaine Sims. Our graphic designer is Rachel Slingluff. Happy Pace was recorded in front of a live Forest Park audience. So that's how we got to 26.2 miles.
We can thank Queen Alexandra.
Morning! Wait, is that Casey? We gave you a shout out already this morning!
We see you.
Hi, Bonnie. Morning. Hi, Doug. Morning. 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 Hey, Drew. Hey, Elaine. That's Drew. Morning. Oh, hey, Kim. It's great. I knew someone that I ran past. Morning. 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 Good job. I'm sorry. Morning. 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 Also really need to go to the bathroom. Morning. 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 Morning.
And morning.
Morning.